2011's kind of sucked all the air out of the room in the dream gun market space, but what if a good old-fashioned double single gun could keep up in nearly every conceivable way, yet still come in at a price cheaper than a staccato? So Tanfoglio guns have been my favorite double single guns for quite a while now, and that's for a bunch of reasons. Namely, they come in hard chrome finish, which nobody else is doing, and they're more accurate than a production gun ought to be. Like, they're scary accurate. But more importantly, they've got a really nice size frame with a very nice sculpt on the beaver tail that allows you to get all of your hand on the gun to control recoil while simultaneously keeping a trigger reach that's absolutely manageable. And on top of that, they're about the right weight and they're obscenely easy to shoot well and shoot fast. And adding to that, the Stock Master Xtreme, which has a name that is totally perfect to be in a 1990s Mountain Dew commercial because it is that radical, kind of carries that to the next level. The criticism of Tanfoglio guns in the past has been that the triggers out of the box require a lot of work, and working on Tanfoglio guns is hard. That's when my buddy Chris over at the Italian Firearms Group got in touch with me. He's like, you got to see what they're doing with these triggers. And I was like, okay, cool. Send out one of the, limited guns, the LOK optic ready or something like that. I'll check it out. He's like, no, you need to see the double action. So he sent out the Stock Master for me to take a look at. And I agree with him. The triggers on these guns are pretty obscene out of the box, not to the point you would need to do anything to them. So the gun showed up with the Shield RMSX writing on top for me to take a look at. So similar to the Stock 2, there's not a ton different between the guns. Like at a frame level, they added a rail to the Stock Master, and they've got these extreme grips, which are kind of pricey if you were to buy them independently. They're like 120 bucks. The gun itself sells for about $21.50, which is a lot of money, but still cheaper than a staccato. It comes with a multi-optic plate. You can see this is taking an RMS size optic, but it could take Delta Point Pro or RMR just as easily. And immediately the looks were kind of stunning. Like I say, I am a sucker for a hard chrome gun, and look at that bad boy. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It's not gonna be for everybody, but it's certainly for me. And the thing that is going to kind of stand out is you'll get the gun and you'll rack the slide. You'll hear kind of the barrel kind of unlocking with the slide. You'll be like, it's not super tight or whatever, but I am a fancy man with a fancy pistol rest, and I took it to an indoor range using my Buffalo Creek 115 range loads, which are pretty soft shooting and certainly worse soft shooting out of this gun. Using that fancy pistol rest, I was able to get this at 25 yards. That's right, 7 of 10 of these bullets are touching. The one on the way left, the gun wasn't seated in the rest, and I gave it a bad trigger pull. The other two were vision. I just didn't have the gun held in the right spot. That is range loads printing hole-on-hole groups at 25 yards. This gun is as accurate and more accurate than most 2011 pistols. It's absolutely insane. And I chuckle about the fitment because I call guns that you don't have to give a lot of attention to lawnmower guns, because you just kind of throw it in your garage and you start it up and use it and then put it back and that's it. You don't change the oil or air filter or anything like that. Some of you guys got really, really triggered when I just said that, but it's okay. But the Tanfoglio guns are like that as well. Now my Stock 2, which I've had since 2022, I've never cleaned. I just oil the gun when I take it out of the safe, take it to the range and shoot it, and then put it back in the safe. I've let friends borrow it and shooting it who knows how much. I cleaned it recently as I made this video, and it was the first time I had ever cleaned the gun. It's not something people like to hear, but competitive shooters who don't like cleaning guns, that is a nice feature to have. So they don't take a lot of maintenance, they're easy to shoot fast, and they're easy to be very accurate with, which are 3 characteristics of a dream gun that begin to command that price. Taking it to the proper outdoor range, I immediately started doing what cringy YouTubers do, which is turning money into noise and filming it. Immediately, I was impressed with the trigger, and just to show you the double action, there is not really any stacking, and this does have a firing pin block, which is kind of cool, which makes it a little bit safer than our non-firing pin block friends. But the double action is like butter, and the single action has almost no trigger travel. Like, look at that, it's right on the wall. It releases with a tiny bit of over travel, and the reset is super duper short. I was immediately swinging the gun around like I would a gun that I'd been shooting a really long time, and I hadn't been shooting Tanfos much at all recently. So I walked over to where my gun club keeps up the sample stage and shot the sample stage from low ready because I didn't have a holster that would fit the Stock Master Xtreme. Wait, hold on. Xtreme! We hadn't done that in a while. I had to do that, keep you guys on your toes. And what I found on that stage is that it handled great on one of the no-shoot targets that I kind of shot in anger, kind of this target right here. The bullet holes look like this, and I shot it like that, so that's pretty awesome. So I decided to do something irresponsible, and I decided that in the next week when I was going to go to the Texas State Open USPSA match, I would shoot this gun in limited optics in single action only. I realize the point of the Stock Master is the fact it is a double single carry optics gun, but I think carry optics as a division is stupid and it should all just be limited optics. And plus, I wanted to try it in single action only to see how the Tanfoglio safeties were and what I could learn about the gun in the context of this gun was designed for. So immediately after filming with the gun, I got on the internet and ordered the first holster I could be sure would get to my house before Thursday when I left to go to the match. That happened to be the Double Alpha Max holster for the Stock 3, which this is basically a Stock 3 frame, very similar. So the gun fits very well in that. Ghost holster also makes a Hydra for this gun, and that's honestly the holster that I wanted because it's a little bit cheaper, and I just couldn't get it by the time I was going to be leaving. But if you were to go to Ghost Holster Direct and use code GEARUP10, that might help you out. So starting the match with a new gun, I was distracted by talking to the RO, assuring him that I'm shooting a carry optics gun in limited optics. I forgot to chamber around on the first stage, but it was a standard stage where I had to shoot freestyle and then strong hand, then do it again with freestyle and then support hand. The shooting with the gun went just fine. I was still a little bit hesitant as I was kind of warming up first stage of the day with a gun I hadn't shot a terrible amount, but it went fine. The second stage is when disaster hit. The second stage had a low port, and I, shot the standing up bits of the stage just fine, finished in the low port. And the first target in the low port, I poked the gun too far into the port, and on the second shot, as the slide came back, it bashed the optic really hard right there, so much so that it kind of deformed the shroud of the optic. The optic is fine, but what that caused the optic to do, it's either the mount or the optic itself shifted to the right. But the next two stages wouldn't show me that. The next two stages were all close range targets, and while I was dropping a lot more Charlies than I typically do, I just chalked it up to trying to get a bit over my skis and pin my ears back and race. The stage with the 25-yard shooting, however, showed me that the zero was off. On extremely technical stages that require a lot of accuracy, it's usually where I shine. Those are my favorite kind of stages. I usually do disproportionately well on those kinds of stages. And on this stage, I could not hit steel. My body kind of figured out where the hold needed to be in order to make the steel hit, but my mind had it kind of processed where I was actually putting the dot. And then when I was going to shoot paper, I just held the dot on the middle of the paper and shot it like I normally would. And at 20 to 25 yards, that means all the shots wound up about 6 to 8 inches to the right. So I had a lot of Charlie deltas. That up down that you saw was actually a 2 mic. The shots weren't even on paper because that was the furthest target that I shot at. So that sucked. Went to the function fire bay and tried to get the gun zero, but I'm sharing it with Chrono, and there's no clean targets there, so I couldn't really get it zeroed. I wasn't sure if the zero was walking at this point or if it had just shifted. Shot one more stage. It seemed to go well enough, so that was okay. Although I was kind of holding back on the steel because I wasn't sure whether it was going to hit or not. Shooting the stage after it, I ended up hitting edge hit on a steel and leaving a position having to come back to it. So at that point, I was like, you know what? I don't have this gun zeroed. I'm not going to limp along with it for the rest of the day. So I swapped to my Bull Armory Blaze, which is why I said to you, it keeps up with 2011s in the beginning. If you haven't watched the video on the Bull Armory Blaze, you can see it on the channel. It went up like a week or two ago, and it's an excellent gun and what I'd been shooting in recent competition history. But as far as you lot are concerned, it was a good thing because I got to shoot the guns back to back in a competitive context beyond just kind of plinking at the range. So I was able to learn a lot about the gun and how it does kind of stack up next to something like a 2011 pistol. What I found is that the recoil impulse on this gun is different. It's like a slower recoil impulse than a 2011. The 2011 is just a little bit more abrupt, at least the Blaze is, which is only about 37 ounces. This is about 44 ounces or so, so it's a little bit heavier. It's a steel frame gun. It doesn't dump a lot of energy in your arms. It's just as pleasant to shoot as a 2011. The trigger on the 2011, I'm a little bit more comfortable rage blasting with, but if I spent more time with this trigger, I have no doubt that I could develop that same speed for it. What I did appreciate about the 2011 next to it is the fact that the 2011 is much fatter, so there's a lot of space to get my second hand on the gun, my support hand. Whereas on my Stock 2, I've got these palm swell gridlock grips, and so I'm able to get behind the gun properly. I've already got the LOK Grips on order as I'm filming this. I'm sure I'll give you some B-roll to show you how it looks with its LOK Grips. If you need some LOK Grips, check out code HUMBLE. It can help, I promise. The other thing that I found interesting is that this is a large frame Tanfoglio mag, which is basically, it's made for higher calibers like a 10mm or potentially a, I guess, 45. But because it's a steel frame gun with a steel magazine body, it's better than it used to be. But if you kind of twist the mag as you're trying to insert it, it will bind up, like right there, like it's not going in. I can't put enough force on it to get the magazine to seat, but it's very easy. Obviously, I didn't have any issues reloading the gun. What's kind of cool about the frames, as I mentioned, is that they're kind of long front to back, but trigger reach is still manageable right out of the box. So I think that, like, even though it's a bigger frame than like a CZ, I think the trigger reach is probably a little bit more manageable. But also, if you're a larger handed shooter, this is a much better grip than the CZ grip. The CZ grip is just too short and you don't quite get all your hands on the gun like you need to. I feel like I have a lot more control over the Tanfoglio frames. Because it's an extreme gun, it did come with 4 of these 18-round magazines that you see here. And that's kind of nice. They've got aluminum base pads for the extreme kit. So there are 4 mags out of the box, which is pretty nice. The throats on these guns are very, very short. My typical competition load, I'm loading RMR 115 jacketed hollow points at like 1.12, which works just fine in 2011 style guns, doesn't chamber at all in this gun. So what that means is I had to hit up a buddy who was nearby. Daniel helped me out by selling me a case of his Precision Delta V2s 124 jacketed hollow points. I was able to get those loaded out to like 1.18 because they plunked at like 1.127. That's all reloading technical jargon. All of that to say is you have to load jacketed hollow points really short or use round nose profiles. The safeties, while not at all shaped like 2011 safeties, are actually really, really usable. I really like how they are. They don't have the huge, like, pronounced thumb ledge, so the safeties are actually pretty good. Now, obviously, there are some drawbacks with the gun. We talked about the magazine insertion issues, and the magazines, they're actually pretty inexpensive. You can get those bad boys for sub $30, I want to say, right now when I was looking. I think I saw them for as low as like 26, so that's pretty cool. So the magazines do bind. You have to make sure that the ammo you're shooting through it is short, and obviously the price tag for a hard chrome gun, which is kind of a superior weapons finish. It's like super wear resistant. It's extra slick, so you know it doesn't need to be oiled regularly, although you should oil your guns. It's just a really easy shooting gun. It's really easy to light. The gun is both too heavy and too wide for the IDPA box. They make other models. If that's your sport of choice, you could check those out. As far as comparing it to the Stock 2 is concerned, the Stock 2 does not have a rail on its dust cover, while the Stock Master Xtreme does. The actual recoil impulse shooting these side by side, while this one's just a little bit heavier, it's very, very similar. There isn't a pronounced difference. The biggest difference was in the trigger, like the trigger travel and reset on the OEM Stock 2 is a little bit longer versus the extreme parts, which makes the trigger travel shorter. That's really the biggest difference between these two guns. Other than that, you could A/B shoot these side by side and you really can't really tell a difference. The biggest problem with the gun is going to be the price tag, but I can tell you a secret in case you didn't know. There's an outfit called Patriot Defense. You can get, you know, the guns breathed on by somebody who knows what they're doing, and they come out much nicer, including reaming the barrels. So while this gun is about $21.50, if you got the base model of this gun from those guys, let them do their work on it, it would have their optics cut an action job, and you would be saving over $300. So that's kind of cool. The Extreme model is going to hold its resale value because it's a more valuable gun out of the box. But at the same time, if you just are after performance, you could save some money looking at the stock ones. And the dudes over at the Italian Firearms Group have done a great job. All of the parts that if you need to maintain a high round count gun, all of those parts are in stock there and at Patriot Defense. So the ecosystem is well developed. It's just not a gun that gets a lot of love kind of in the wider market beyond kind of competition circles. And honestly, it probably should. I think a gun like this makes more sense than a cheap 2011 that you're going to have to, you know, throw a bunch of money at to get it working and then keep it working. If you're lazy and you don't like maintaining guns, I think the Tanfoglios really have a strong value proposition because, I mean, like I said, they're lawnmower guns. It's fantastic. So Tanfoglio as a brand, I feel like is underrated. The guns are absolutely performance shooting machines. I loved my time with the Stock Master. I'll shoot it some more with the fancy grips on and post pictures on my X account. Follow me on X if you haven't already, and you can see what the gun looks like with the new grips. If you haven't watched my video on the Stock 2 when I first kind of fell in love with the Tanfoglio brand, you can see that here. I appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.